Yeah, actually, yes, that was all modeled. In fact, we just went through it with our WDI again, and they looked at it. So it's a minimal amount of vibration. The tuned mass dampener on the top actually, circumvents that to some extent. But there's sort of a different question here in a way that I wanted to touch on, and that is, it's interesting to make a building of this size sustainable, and I appreciate that, but I can tell you that what's much more important in China is dealing with much larger sustainable design issues. And I get this question sometimes I got it from Berkeley. A lot of the kids at Berkeley said, well, why is a super tower sustainable? And I'm not sure that a super tower in a lot of ways is sustainable, because a super tower and what it is a symbol. It's something more than just a building to the city, right? But you start looking at sustainability issues, wind generation, all this other kind of stuff. What's really more important is master planning and urban design and the broader context, because this building may be going on what would be it isn't, but it could have been going on what would have been the equivalent of a Superfund site, right? And in China, those things, it could be polluting groundwater and nobody asks a question about it. It could be destroying the riverfronts, and nobody's asking questions about it. So what I've been trying to push in China is this idea of thinking bigger, thinking bigger in terms of sustainable design. Don't talk about, great, let's get LEED certification on this building, but there are much, much bigger issues that we need to be dealing with. Although that's important, it's not the only thing.
I'd like to just follow up on the sustainable city piece of it, and you can disagree with the premise I'm about to offer, please do. Your office is in old Shanghai. You look across the river where the Shanghai Tower is to Pudong, and it's like two different cities. The old city is vibrant and rich and textural. Pudong is not much more than a super scaled American suburban placeless development. You agree with that?
Well, no. And the reason, I would agree with the characterization as a placeless development, because it's not, there's no human scale to it.
Exactly.
You look at those buildings, every single building around there 15 years ago wasn't there, and they're all 50 to 65 story buildings, right? And ours is 120. So it's not a city for people. And it bothers me.
No animation of the streets?
No, and I got interviewed by the China press about 3 weeks ago, and I'm sure that I annoyed them. I'm not even sure it ended up in the China Daily or not, but they asked me about Beijing, and the same question, right? And we were in Beijing 3 weeks ago, and 6 lanes of highway in one direction. This is in the city, the ring road. 6 lanes on one side, 6 lanes on the other side, 2 feeder roads, 2 feeder roads. So you got 16 lanes of road, and they're all like that. And you won't take your life in your hand across one of those roads, right? And I kid you not, it was rush hour, and one entire ring road, as far as the eye could see, was shut down. Everybody was out of their cars and they were smoking cigarettes on the freeway, right? And so that's not a sustainable city. And so the China Daily asked me what would happen. And I told them that they were going down the wrong path. I said, you guys are doing what we're doing. I said, you seem to think that, the answer is, everybody gets a car. Well, there were 400,000 cars added in Beijing last year. It's gridlocked, even though they have a subway system. So my point was that you guys are going to cover over all this stuff. I said, you may have these roadway systems, but you've got to connect the city together. And that maybe, all of this gets covered over in some way, and that ultimately it's got to be a walkable city, because it isn't. And I think because of that, I think not only in Shanghai and Beijing, but other Chinese cities, that it could be a real serious problem over the long run.
You made a couple of references in your presentation about the importance of being able to sketch in front of the client.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that a little bit? We try and teach that.
See, all the students are leaving because they know that we're talking about sketching right now.
I think they're in the middle of the design
No,
studio.
I'm sure.
You'll understand that.
But it's what's.
Computer environment.
Well, first of all, just because you can do it through parametric modeling or you can do it on a computer doesn't mean it's good design, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. And we get some really strange things that get generated by folks that are playing with computers, right? And it's not even a matter of whether it can be built or not, it's just not good design. I think that but what I have found, and I still find it today, and we found it with the Shanghai Tower. You saw those little hand sketches? The way we engaged the client early on, during the competition process, was going out and sketching in front of them. This is really important. And you know, as architects, this is really an amazing thing. This and this, right? And if you can learn how to do this really well, people, they're in awe. And they're not in awe about being able to do computerized render. I mean, you see these slick kind of presentations and stuff. This is done by this first, hand sketches and ideas and everything else, but being able to sit across from a client and sit down and say, I got these ideas. And I'll tell you a story, like on the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, couldn't compete on it. We didn't compete on it because art was on the board, but I don't know whether it was Vignoli. He's here next week, right? I think it was Vignoli. I think it was Vignoli. Yeah, I can't believe that I'm sitting here. I see my name on that sheet and I go, you know, who's Dan Winey? What's that all about? But Vignoli, I think, came into the meeting and he had a pad of paper and he sketched to the front of the board of MoMA and said, these are some of the ideas that I have. And he just sort of sketched. That was it, right? No, you know, these are all my great museums I've done, right? You know, but I think that there's some really artistry and beauty in being able to sit down and sketch. And I certainly hope to God students don't lose that. I hope that fine arts, life drawing, render, all this kind of things that we learned, you know, we were magic markers and watercolors, right, at Howard Eder, and ink and stuff. But you can't lose that. I think if you lose that, you've really lost something important.
Other questions? Maybe one or two more? When you were,
over there.
oh, I'm sorry, and then I'll do it.
I can't see.
Go ahead.
What is, would you say, the best way to connect between the initial idea when you say, okay, I'm going to try and design for this, and then how do you approach possible design, keeping in mind that you have designed in so many different places? How do you know what's appropriate?
You mean approach it in terms of actually doing computer modeling eventually? What's that intersection look like?
No, not necessarily just design. How do you know, okay, well, I'm going to go towards more artistic or more basic or...
God, I hope everything's sort of artistic. I don't know that, I think, to me, you know, when you look at the work and you look at the portfolio and you look at the work, like you look at some of the things I've done, you say, look at Lucas, which is sort of Frank Lloyd Wright style, you know, prairie style, and then you look at something else. I think so much of it, to me, is not, and this is different than I think a lot of other architects. I think architects look at a certain viewpoint, a certain philosophy. They're pursuing a certain personal philosophy. I think it's more about the client, and I think it's the dialogue and the conversation that I have with the client. And so a lot of the design solutions and the way it evolves comes out of that conversation. And I think that conversation is a really, really important part of the design process in terms of coming up with really great design solutions. I really do.
Let me end with one question, and it gets back.
Nothing difficult, please.
No, really, it isn't. I think this is a slam dunk question for you. You bringing up George Lucas again, and it reminded me of your storyboards, the story that you told, and another great director, Steven Spielberg, who collaborated with Lucas. And there was a movie, Amistad. I think you probably remember the movie. And there's a scene where John Quincy Adams is about to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court, and the young lawyer says, well, here are the facts of the case. He says, don't worry about the facts of the case. The one that wins the case is the one that tells the best story. And what role has storytelling played in your career and the development of your career, selling of the work to the client, selling, getting the job in the first place? How important is the story?
It's the most important part. I mean, it's not even just doing architecture. I mean, it is. Again, I think that when it comes to architecture, the idea that a building is something more than just a building, and the way that you can sort of bring a client into the process and emotionally involve them is something that's really important, and you do that through storytelling. I also think that storytelling comes into play in a big way in a design practice, right? So, you know, we're going through our second, third generation of transition against solar, and it's pretty damn seamless. No big power struggles, nobody fighting. And I think that the reason is I use storytelling to try to help people understand the culture of the organization, what we're all about. And so I think storytelling is a way to sort of help people sort of understand in their own way what it is that what you're trying to express, right? You can say it in PowerPoints or words or whatever, but they all sort of can connect in some way to stories, because, you know, that's what life is all about. It's like one big story. So, you know, it's been a really important, and I try to always remember that. Not about an office building, you know, it's not about, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's about something that has happened to me that I think might be of, you know, interest to you. And I try to share those things, that's all.
Well, Dan, we have a number of your cohorts out here that are distinguished alums, and I look at your young mentor out there, your young pup mentor, and the 13 others.
Young guy here. Yeah.
And the 13 others, and you're joining this terrific group of distinguished alums here at Lawrence Tech.
To the other guys.
And
you know.
everyone, let us once again congratulate Dan Winey.